Okay, so hello everybody, welcome to our webinar today. The topic is creating effective minutes for your board. My name's Sean McDonald and I'll be your moderator for the next 45 minutes, and my colleague Vari Mackay-Stewart will be online to answer hopefully your many questions. So during our webinar today, if you do have any questions, which we hope you do, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and Vari will answer as many of these as we have time for. And finally, as is customary for our webinars, if you stay through till the end, we have a very special treat for you. By answering our very short 1-minute survey, you'll go into the draw to win a beautiful gift hamper from our friends at Taken Care Of, worth over $400. Now, for those of you that don't know BoardPro, we're a board software provider that serve around 13,000 users around the world, and we enable organizations to run their board meetings more efficiently and effectively with less time and deliver more impact and value for their organization. Now, as much as we're a software provider, part of our wider mission is to make the fundamentals of governance free and easy to implement for all organizations, especially those with resource constraints, small, medium businesses and non-for-profits. So today, I'm very excited to introduce our speakers today, particularly Jen Butler, who joins us from the Wairarapa. More on that a little bit later on. Graham Narkis co-founded BoardWorks in 1997, Australasia's first specialist governance consultancy. Since then, the company has worked with over 600 clients across many sectors, and Graham is now BoardWorks practice leader, ensuring the organisation stays at the forefront of contemporary practice. Good afternoon to you, Graham.
Good afternoon, Sean, and good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see so many people from all around the world with us this afternoon.
Fabulous. And Jen Butler, the very famous Jen Butler, is a professional board secretary in both public and private sectors, working across a variety of industries, business types and organisations of all sizes. Jen brings a fresh and collaborative approach to governance, organisation, planning and administration. Kia ora to you, Jen.
Kia ora, Sean. Thank you so much for that brilliant introduction. Kia ora koutou. I am Jen from Absolute Gems, and I'm not so much famous, but the team at BoardPro call me a super user or a VIP. So with 14 active boards on BoardPro, I use BoardPro quite often.
Awesome, thanks Jen. And Brett Hirk is the co-founder and CEO here at BoardPro. Brett's a serial entrepreneur, having built several high-growth businesses over the last 20 years. And Brett brings tenacity for sure, a strategic mindset, strong generalist business skills and enduring curiosity to the table.
Thank you, Sean, and kia ora to everyone.
So for the next 45 minutes, just relax, listen to the discussion and answer as many questions as you would like. The full recording of this webinar, along with the slide deck, the white paper and the minutes templates, will be sent to you at the conclusion of today's session. So just relax and kick back. Now, the webinar series today is centered around what we call the 3x5 Governance Playbook. And Brett is the creator and author of the playbook. So Brett, would you like to explain why you created the playbook and what value it delivers?
Yeah, sure. So we just discovered in the early days, we serve fundamentally small, medium business, mid-sector to some degree, and not-for-profits. And we discovered amongst our user base that there's a lot of our users on the journey of growing into maturity in terms of their governance practices. And really, we saw so many questions about governance on our support channel, which is predominantly there to help people use the technology, that we really just decided to step up into the breach and produce materials. So the 3x5 Governance Playbook is really our take on what minimum viable governance is. And we've been producing this series of webinars and resources just to really put practical and easy to use materials and guidance into the hands of the community we serve.
Fabulous. Thanks, Brett. So the floor is over to you, Graham.
Thank you, Sean. So it's easy with minutes to just treat them as a routine admin exercise, preparing them, distributing them, etc. And they sort of go into the the minute book or its electronic equivalent, and probably get forgotten about. But actually, as we're going to show you in the first part of the webinar, they're very important for a range of reasons. So can you, yeah, that's good. The first and most obvious one, I guess, is that in most jurisdictions, there is a legal requirement to produce minutes. Sometimes it's more explicit in terms of general meetings of shareholders or members. Often the statutes refer specifically to those, but also to just the need to prepare minutes to record the activities of the board. And we're focusing on the board minutes primarily today. Just like to note at this point, though, that in a compliance sense, it's not just about the keeping of minutes in the sense of taking a record of the meeting, but it's also about how they're stored, how they're retrieved, and for how long are they available in that context as well. Now, the first of these, or second, I should say, of the reasons why they're important is really interesting, because when I first started getting on boards and reporting to boards as a senior executive, the advice was generally keep minutes to a minimum, and often that was just recording the decisions of the board. Over recent years, and I say recent in terms of the last 20, perhaps a little bit longer even, that the legal advice has completely switched around, and now best practice is considered to be a more fulsome record, which actually lays a paper trail of how the board has arrived at its decisions. And so the board minutes serve a very important role in terms of being a document, an enduring record, if you like, of how the board reached certain conclusions, made certain decisions, adopted certain policies. And the thing about the final quote on this screen, often referred to minutes these days as a letter to the judge. In other words, where they become really important sometimes is if the decision of a board is legally challenged in court or in a regulatory environment of some kind. So the thing is that we want to lay that sort of paper trail which shows that the board has been really thorough in its process. Now, we're going to qualify that a little bit later on in terms of how long the minutes need to be and the like, but essentially it's about providing evidence, and that is potentially quite important in many circumstances. One of the things that's also important in relation to that is to acknowledge that if you don't put it in your minutes, the courts may well consider, if you later claim something was important but it wasn't referred to in the minutes, that actually it's not as important as you said it was. Now, the next one, which is also really important, and it relates to this paper trail, I guess, is that the minutes can be a really significant protection for both organisational and individual director reputation. One of the reasons is that conflicts of interest come up all the time. It will vary perhaps in different countries, but in a small population base like we have in New Zealand, many of us struggle to avoid having potential conflicts of interest. Not all interests are going to conflict, but it's important that the board handles those conflicts, recognises them, and manages them really carefully. The minutes are the most important protection in terms of describing how you have handled those conflicts. Another thing that's really important, there was a case in New Zealand recently that underlined this, where a Crown-owned company failed. There had been a lot of talk on the rumour mill about the board not having done its job properly. The Auditor General reviewed some significant board decisions where those decisions were later seen to have contributed to the failure of the company. But the record in the board minutes, which the Auditor General relied on, actually demonstrated that the board had been very thorough, and so had management in advising the board. It wasn't perfect by any means, and the board copped a little bit of criticism because it hadn't been as thorough as it might have been in some areas. But generally, the minutes saved the reputation of the directors who were being criticised.
Jen, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, it's quite difficult to work out when a director is conflicted, but the general rule of thumb, if they're involved in a transaction with the business and they are financially set to benefit, then they're certainly conflicted, and they should certainly be noted in the minutes as being conflicted. And the way that boards deal with conflict is very different. So potentially, some boards actually even ask their directors to leave the room, which according to the Companies Act is not quite right. The director is free to leave the room if they feel comfortable, and that can be suggested. But the Companies Act does say that a conflicted director can participate in the conversation, and in fact can even vote on the conflict, on the resolution at hand, even if they are conflicted.
Interesting.
There's Sean, there's quite a good question here, which is a bit of a it goes along with this letter to the judge. So when board meetings are recorded by Zoom, how's that? Is that also used in the court of law, or is it just the written minutes? Jen?
I can certainly take this one now. I 100%
awesome.
do not encourage clients to record their meetings. Anything that you record is discoverable. So that means the flippant offhand comment that often brings a group of people together and creates that team environment in the boardroom is going to be recorded.
I think just to add to that, Jen, the record of the meeting by video record is actually akin to a transcript, isn't it? Whereas your minutes are much more selective.
Correct. And the minutes allow, you put together the minutes, they are a true and accurate reflection of the meeting. However, you are able to interpret what you believe to be a true and accurate record of that meeting. A video transcript does not allow that, and it does mean that it is discoverable in a court of law.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So moving on, Sean, another really important aspect of minutes is that they clarify responsibility and they give the board a mechanism to track implementation of its decisions. Ideally, the minutes will record not only the action to be taken, but who is assigned responsibility for that. A lot of boards actually then extract and create from their minutes an action list. Jen, have you got any thoughts on separating minutes and actions, or should they be in the same document?
I leave my actions in the minutes, and then I create a separate actions list if I'm not using BoardPro, and I've only got a couple of boards that don't use BoardPro. So it's a while since I've had to do that. But I create a separate actions list, and I think it's really important here that the actions list shouldn't be onerous. So administrative tasks shouldn't be added to the action list. It should be only information that the board has asked for, and for it to come back to the board for confirmation.
Yeah. So its basis is about implementation of the board's decisions. That's the primary reference point. And another reference point is that it gives the board a sense of progress on implementation. And the minutes often are, the actual record is able to be referred to without necessarily being consulted. People just get reminded that a particular decision was taken. And I mean, one of the things I quite often find is with busy directors on a number of boards, they do need that sort of memory jogging because they go from one meeting in one company or organisation to the next. And I always say to chief executives, do not assume that your directors remember one iota of the previous meeting.
No, in fact, Graham, you're so right. BoardPro makes it easy because that they automatically send out the actions to each participant and a reminder, and then another reminder. So, it practically does your job as a board secretary for you in that respect.
Could you pop back a slide, Sean? I just wanted to put a question to Graham. So my view, Graham, and I'd be interested in yours and Jen as well, is that kind of we've talked in these webinars again and again, the job of the board is to create the future, is responsible for creating the ultimate outcomes that the shareholders and stakeholders desire. So I've kind of got a bit of a view that a third of the purpose of minutes is to cover the past and compliance and justification, but 2/3 of the real driving purpose of minutes is to be very clear about the decisions that are made and create an accountability trail that the board can track. That yes, the things they've agreed are most critical are those that they can follow up on. Do you either of you have a view, or both of you have a view on that?
I agree with what you just said 100%. That's my view.
That's easy. And go on, Jen.
Likewise, I agree 100%. It's one of the things I encourage my boards to do is to start the meeting with their purpose statement, clearly read aloud, or their values of their organisation, just so that it sets the scene for the directors to keep that firmly and focused in mind while they're working through the agenda for the day.
And can I hit you with another question, Jen? Because I've observed we've got recently in the last year or so we've got a very capable PA that's taking our minutes, but it's we're a dynamic organisation raising money, high growth, multiple countries. We have shareholders around the board table. There's fairly robust and dynamic and diverse conversations, and she does a fabulous job to capture, but she's inevitably driven to capture a lot of material. And when I come back as a CEO with the chair I want to condense it down, I'm aware of the letter to the judge. It's a really difficult job to condense it down. I just wondered if you could comment on that, Jen, if you've got any tips and tricks for how to make it efficient to not have too much to get to the core of things.
Look, you've hit the nail on the head why it's so important to have a professional board secretary, Brett. And, it is a particular skill, and a lot of PAs do have that skill and can develop that skill. So I'm more than happy to help. The trick that I find is that as I write the minutes with all of that information in, and then I send that off as a separate document to the people that might be interested in that. And then I cut it right down to exactly what the directors need to know. If it's an information item only topic, then that they discuss that information and any decisions that were made. If it's pertinent to the future of the company and the direction of the company, maybe one paragraph. And that's the challenge, is to get it down to that one paragraph. And later on in the webinar, I'm going to be having a quick chat about the different lenses on which you need to look at the minutes and how you review those minutes to get really good, succinct and efficient, effective minutes.
Very nice.
Thanks, Brett, for that.
Graham, were you going to add something?
Yeah, look, this just picks up on Brett's first third where he was talking about the past. Minutes are really important if they have adequately recorded the essence of decisions. It enables the board to then conduct, for example, post-implementation reviews of important decisions. Were the assumptions correct? What we try to achieve, was it achieved? And the second one really is its opportunity to reflect back on policy. I mean, policy making is quite a dynamic process, as we've discussed in previous webinars. But with the turnover of board members, often the rationale for policies gets lost. And I had a situation with one of New Zealand's commercial regulators with the board when an issue came up in a board review about the continued validity of a particular policy. It proved impossible to find any documentation of the original rationale for that policy, which was quite a significant one, and they really needed to know where the board's thinking started from. So that's looking to the past is also important, as well as Brett's 2/3 about designing the future. And there's a variety of other benefits in the minutes. And one of those is to assist prospective board members to undertake due diligence. I don't think that it's wise for any director, particularly dealing with a fast growth organisation or some other situation where the risks are relatively high. They really need to have the opportunity to look at the way the board's thinking has developed and to understand exactly what the existing directors know about the condition of the company. Another one is assisting new board members, obviously, to get up to speed. And typically, induction, which is not well done by most boards, amounts to a pile of paper. And the minutes will be a really important part of that paper. And I'm not knocking the paper trail in that context at all. And thirdly, there's an opportunity to use the minutes if you're an internal auditor or an external auditor to check that authority has been properly exercised and other factors as well.
Jen, do you have any comments on that?
I think that that's a pretty good and accurate description of what the minutes should be there for, looking back in the past. And I think that not enough directors, particularly young and upcoming directors, can often be flattered to be, invited to sit on a board, and they just, that sort of clouds their head. And I think induction, I agree with Graham, induction isn't done particularly well unless you have a really good, competent board secretary.
Excellent.
And the final factor that we've listed here as to why board minutes are important is that it's actually the part of the process of writing the organisation's history. Often organisations look at some important milestone in their history to prepare a corporate history, and the historian who does that work, or historians, the first place they will look, or certainly as a primary source, will be the minutes of the organisation, both at board and general meeting level. So don't underestimate the value of fulsome minutes in that context as well.
Vari, we have a number of questions I can see here. Would you like to bring forward a few of these?
Yeah, I really like this question. It was our first question of the day, so thanks for that. Board only time. Should a summary of the board only time be included in the minutes, or should it just not be reported in the minutes at all?
Jen?
Yes is the answer. Yes, board only time should be noted, and the length of board only time. And I always ask my chairs to give a summary of the topics that were discussed. No information needs to be shared about that, but it is part of reassuring your executive that it's important for the board to meet by themselves, and it's important for them to discuss management issues without management being present. But it's not a session to undermine or gang up against management. So management often feel a lot more comfortable once the topics of conversation have been outlined by the chair, and particularly it's often got absolutely nothing to do with management and the way they're conducting the business that the board need to meet for board only time.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jen.
Do we have time? Yeah, here's a good one. If you don't have a professional minute taker, who's the next best person to do this? Thanks, Liz.
I think this is for you as well.
Yes.
Okay. Get one. So we had this conversation yesterday, and in these situations, quite often the job of taking the minutes falls to the one and only or woman on the board. I really discourage that, and it's really difficult for anybody who is sitting on the board to take minutes and to actively participate and be valuable to the board. And the reason that they've been appointed to the board is for that value. So if you don't have a minute taker, dare I say it, I'm going to contradict my advice previously and say, record your meeting, make your minutes, and then destroy your recording straight away. just allows everybody the equal opportunity to take part in the meeting. Or get yourself a professional board secretary or a minute taker. You'd be surprised at the cost versus the value that you receive.
Hopefully we're past the stage now where there is the problem of who's going to make the tea and who's going to take the minutes. And Jen, I hope that you're seeing some boards that don't default to that.
Yeah.
And really, the other thing about that, and maybe we're starting to get a wee bit into the second part of this webinar, but it's really important to consider what shouldn't be or who shouldn't be taking the minutes. And for me, that is anyone who's got an instrumental role, like the chair or the chief executive, or the company secretary, if there is a company secretary, who actually need to be actively involved in thinking through the meeting and conducting the meeting process.
What about, can I ask a question, Graham? So smaller organisations, we've got so many of them amongst our customer base, and many of them, I'm sad to say, Jen, won't find the justification for a professional minute taker. And I observe, critical decisions, there's nuance, and it's not always clear what entirely the reason why, where you're at in evolving decisions. So whoever produces the minutes, be it the CEO or the chair, has some influence or power over what's said and creating that history, which can be referred back to later. Do you have any views on overcoming that sort of capture by an individual who, at a senior role, who does draft the first copy of the minutes?
Well, for me, Brett, it's about ensuring that draft minutes get distributed to all of those who are present very quickly. So it's fresh in everyone's mind, and it's more obvious in that situation if the minute taker has been selective in their recollections of the meeting.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
So, Graham, back to you.
Okay, well, taking the minutes, actually, I'm going to pass this straight to Jen, because I know that she's going to elaborate on each of these points, because I think that it's a really important slide that we've got here. And we've started talking about it already, but I'm sure she'll add to it.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. It is a really important slide, and I think not enough thought actually goes into the roles and the differences between a minute taker and a board secretary. So just to clarify, my view of a minute taker is somebody who comes into your meeting, sits down, takes the minutes. They do have enough understanding of the business to be able to make notes and to know what is important, but they will generally take a lot more notes and provide a much more detailed view of the meeting than a board secretary. That person's not involved anywhere else. They draft the minutes, they give the draft minutes to the chair, and then they may make some alteration if the chair asks for that to happen, and that's the end of that process. That's all that they do. A board secretary, on the other hand, well, you get a lot of bang for your buck with a board secretary. So you have somebody who is able to facilitate that induction, as we talked about earlier, Graham, getting a good induction, making sure that the directors have access to BoardPro or whatever governance tool you're using, that they have access to the minutes, and you are available to them for them to ask questions and to have that conversation with them, and whether that's online or in person, so that they are very comfortable with the board processes and how things work. The board secretary also puts together all of your compliance information and keeps your business safe. So, for example, if you don't have a company constitution, then practically you've got no debtors, no directors and officers insurance, because the Companies Act simply says that you can only indemnify your directors if you have specifically noted that in your company constitution. And if your directors aren't noted in your interest register as being an interested party in the business because they are indemnified, again, no D&O insurance. So these are important things that a board secretary really needs to know. You need to be right across the Companies Act, right across the Health and Safety at Work Act. You need to be making sure that you are keeping abreast of all of the latest tools and products to be able to help you use those things to bring your companies forward. A board secretary also has significant influence in the board meeting. So how often have you been in a board meeting and you get down into those really nitty-gritty weeds and you can see your chairs really trying and really struggling to bring the board back up to a governance level? So it's at that time that the board secretary can simply say, for the purposes of the minutes, and then cut that conversation right back to where it needs to be, or the decision that needs to be made. So as a board secretary, you have a significant role in supporting the chair to make sure that the meeting stays on track and is focused. I think it's really important that your board secretary puts together or works with your team to put together the agenda. Make sure that all of the documents that go into your agenda are actually formatted and they look brilliant. It is a reflection of your company, of what material goes into your board pack. So having it look consistent and sharp so that the directors have a clear board pack that is consistent and easy to read. It makes, some directors are having board packs that are 200, 300, 400 pages. If those documents aren't consistent, it makes it particularly difficult for them to read. So that's why there's a huge difference between a minute taker and a board secretary. And, I'm quite happy to answer any more questions that you might have between the two and how to get that good balance.
Yeah, if I can just add to your comments, I think that they point to the important partnership between the chair and the minute taker. And that's a natural sort of team within the board meeting context, and really important that the chair helps the minute taker by summing up at the end of a discussion, for example, points out.
I love that. I love really, my chairs who do that.
Yeah, really clear about this is the decision we've made, because I see people going out of board meetings with completely different perceptions of what's been agreed.
Yeah, that often does happen, and I have two chairs in particular who do that for me, or I will do that at the end of the conversation, and they're quite happy with that. And it's a really great way to switch topics, to close off that topic, for everyone to be clear exactly what's been said and to move through. And this is why PAs often make, I was a PA in a previous life, or an executive officer, or whatever they call them these days. And that's why we make really great board secretaries. And that's because we've already learnt very early on that having a fantastic relationship with our principal, or in this case, the chair, makes it so much better.
Right. Well, looking at what should be in the minutes, the slide talks about the basics, and I think we're probably all familiar with those, but I'd just like to emphasize a couple of them, and Jen might like to add some further comments. The one about keeping track of participants coming and going. It's really important that we know who is actually in the meeting when decisions are made, and sometimes people are unavoidably called out of the room for a period of time, and they may not be party to a particular decision. It's important to record that. It's also important to keep track of whether there's a quorum, whether the board can actually make decisions with the number of people that are around the table at the time. The description of what business was dealt with in what order, I think I'd just like to emphasize the in what order, because frequently, I know as a chair myself, and I see other chairs increasingly doing this, there may be some alteration in the order in which items are taken at the meeting according to their relative importance. They may not be listed on the agenda in that order, but the board decides on the day. Sometimes it's part of that board only time that we were referring to before. Decide where does the board want to put the greater part of its time and attention at this particular meeting. It's important that the minutes record things in the order in which they're dealt with, because that can be quite significant if there is a spotlight turned on a decision, and if decisions were not made in the right sequence, they can undermine decisions that were taken. So that's really important. And then the obvious stuff like, how was the business handled? What was decided? What was the procedure, the process? The recording of votes and those sorts of things are really important as well. And in terms of the lenses, Jen, you referred to this before. Would you like to take us through this?
Yeah. So as a professional board secretary, I see it as my job to protect the directors. And that's part of the reason why we make sure that our minutes are accurate and a true reflection of what happened in the meeting. But and as part of protecting the directors, it's making sure that the directors, that their sentiment really comes through, and that we're really clear. We don't talk about people and their names. We don't talk about them in first person. All the decisions are the board's decisions, unless somebody else has, particularly strong opinions that they ask to be recorded. If they dissent from the decision, and that happens, not often, but it does happen, then I do, as a professional board secretary, ask them if they'd like their dissent to be recorded, and make sure that that is recorded, that that person didn't agree with the decision. But it's also really important, and the chair usually does this job, although sometimes I have stepped in, and saying, hey, even though you don't agree with the decision, once we leave this boardroom, everybody is on the same page. The board has made this decision. And then we carry that outside. So I think that the second lens that needs to be applied is, do the minutes provide enough information that an absent director can actually determine how decisions were made, and what information that in addition to what in addition to what is in the board pack that the rest of the boards received. So again, Brett, that's what we're talking about here. We don't need 3 or 4 paragraphs on that. We maybe need one set of bullet points on the key topics that were discussed. Love bullet points in a set of minutes, because it makes it so easy to be clear about what you're doing, and just jogs the memory of directors that were there, and provides interesting information for those that may not have been there. The minutes are only the recording, and it's really important that they're not lengthy or onerous. Okay, these directors are going to be reading these minutes in the next, in the next board pack. You want them to be focusing on the strategic decisions that need to be made in that board meeting and those kind of papers. So you want your minutes to be short and to the point, so that they can read through those, tick them off, make sure that they're happy with that recording. And, directors should review the minutes with, exactly as Graham said, the view that they're creating the historical document for this company that could be read in front of a room full of jurors, potentially. So the last point on the lenses I will make, sorry, Sean, is that the minutes should reflect the culture that you want and you are going to live at your business. So culture comes from the top down, and you don't get more top other than shareholders, as the board of directors who represent those shareholders. So if you want to have the kind of conversation, then that should be reflected in the culture of the minutes as well. Feel free to use Māori terms if that's what you use in your everyday business. Feel free to put quotes or have a karakia to start your meeting, or a blessing at the end to finish your meeting, and record those in the minutes. And by the way, it doesn't have to be the Māori person on your board that does the karakia. A karakia is a prayer for good wishes, and it could simply be the chair reciting the purpose, the vision, the mission, the values of your business to start the meeting. But do record those in the minutes, because it does reflect that historical component.
Thanks, Jen. Graham, back to you.
Sean, I think we've covered most of the points on the slide about the length of the minutes, but I'd just like to emphasise the point, because there's been a number of court cases in North America around this where judges have said, well, you've told me that something's really important, but there's barely a mention of it in the minutes, and yet there's something else in the minutes that takes up a couple of pages. Just what was the relative importance of things? So, the reference in the minutes should reflect the materiality of the issues that are dealt with.
Great.
And just to finalise now, there's a bunch of sequences here that I think are really important. Obviously, we want the draft minutes to be prepared as quickly as possible while it's all fresh in everyone's memory. It should be reviewed by the chair, not the chief executive. And I say this as a former chief executive myself, it's too easy and too tempting for chief executives to write the minutes in a way which is self-congratulatory and inclined towards the chief executive's view of the world. So the chair, it's the board's meeting, and the chair is the person who's responsible to the board for ensuring the minutes are more or less a good reflection of what actually happened. You want to distribute those so that others can also comment as quickly as possible. But then there's a formal confirmation by the board, and then the minutes are signed off by the chair as a true and correct record. And then they're put in an appropriate storage mechanism. And Jen, your experience probably covers the time when actually they were physically written into a physical minute book.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in the old days, we used to take minutes, pretty much dictate them by shorthand, and then we would carefully, in our very best linked, handwriting, handwrite those minutes in ballpoint pen, because pencil was not allowed because the pencil record could be changed, in ballpoint pen into the minute book, which was a bound book that would hopefully carry the whole year's minutes, and then that minute book would be passed around each individual director before the meeting, and then the chair would sign those minutes off. We've moved away from that to electronic storage now, and the majority of, as I said, the majority of my boards are on BoardPro, and we're still having this conversation about whether these minutes need to be signed by the chair or resolved to be approved. And I think they do still need to be signed. So electronically signing those in a PDF and then storing them back in the resource centre, is an option to do that. But if you don't use BoardPro at the moment for your minutes, then I suggest that you keep a copy of the draft minutes in the folder with all of the papers and all of the supporting information. And then you also keep a copy of the signed minutes in a separate folder with all of your signed minutes to make it much easier if you get any kind of pushback or you need to review those minutes pretty quickly.
Okay, Vari, over to you. We've almost out of time actually, but let's see what we can do in 3 or 4 minutes, shall we?
Yeah, I really like this one. So how can new directors benefit from minutes, and what information should they be looking at? I think this is a new director looking at past minutes.
I clarify, Sean and Vari, are we doing some more questions now, or are we going to do a short demonstration?
We were going to do a short demonstration.
Oh, sorry. Oops. All right, cool. I will take it away. So awesome. So I'm the product specialist at BoardPro. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick look on how you would take your minutes in BoardPro, so that you can see how that would work. Someone was asking about a template in one of the questions, and this might help to answer some of those questions as well. So what I'm sharing with you now is a meeting page in BoardPro, and this is for a meeting that we're going to take some minutes for. So just to set the scene, an agenda has been made for this meeting, a board pack has been produced, and now we are ready to take the minutes for this meeting. So we've got a nice button here that says take the minutes, and we're going to click in here and jump in. So when we take minutes in BoardPro, we follow the agenda structure. So entering the agenda at the beginning, and then when we get to the minutes, we see our agenda, and then we also see the option to record the minutes for each of our agenda items. And in BoardPro, we split the minutes up into 3 different types. So we have notes, decisions, and actions. And these are split up so that we can automate as much of the process for you as possible, and also just to make things really easy to find as well. Looking back, you know, a year later, how do we find our decisions and things like that? So taking the minutes, we'll enter some of these so you can see how these would look. So the first one we've got is a note. So this one is a text box. This one doesn't have any magic properties later on. This is where we just want to record the discussion or record the contents of the meetings, we might say. Something really, really simple, really nice and basic like that. And so you can see here that you can add notes, add more decisions, and build up a bit of a picture here. So we'll head down to this item, one of our big topics for the meeting, and we'll take some minutes for this, this item. So we've got a budget discussion. So a note, we might enter So we'll add in our note, and that one you can see, just like the first one, just comes in like a sentence here. And there's no text limits. You might have a really long note if it's a big discussion that you want to capture a lot of details for. Next one we've got is a decision. So this decision here is a separate type of minute. So on your account, you have a decision register. So when you enter a decision in this format across any meetings, they feed centrally into one single register, and that's searchable by a keyword so that you can find one decision a year later looking back. And so we can enter in some details here. All right, we've got a few fields you can fill out, or you can leave blank. And this, again, this depends on the language that your board uses. If you don't use movers and seconders, you don't need to fill those out. But otherwise, it's a nice like drag and drop kind of fill the blanks in. And then we can add in our, so we can add our decision, and that feeds into our nice decision register as well as the minutes of this meeting. So having our discussion, making decisions, perhaps an action comes out of this or multiple actions, and you can assign actions as well when you take the minutes too. So let's add an action at this stage. So we might have an action. We have a field to assign an owner to this action, so I'm the action for this. And we have a due date field as well. And so assigning a due date in BoardPro for actions will kick off a bit of a workflow on its own for an action. So an action owner would get a few scheduled emails just to help remind them that their action's due. It means that you don't have to, if you're maybe a board secretary or CEO, you don't have to follow up with board members trying to ask them where their action's up to as well. And so we can add in our details.
And finally, Barry, would you like to show everybody the meeting documents area just as we finish?
Yes, yeah, just for time's sake. So when you take your minutes, when you produce your board pack, when you have a meeting agenda, these are all available to find in one place in your BoardPro account. So under your meeting documents section here, there is a really great place to find all of your meetings that you have held in BoardPro. And just at your fingertips, you can see the agenda, the board pack, and the minutes for every meeting that you've got there. And you can preview these and download these. You can also keyword search as well, so you can pull up any results related to that too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Barry.
No problem.
Well, I think that sort of brings us to an end, doesn't it, Sean, in terms of the things we were going to cover. And clearly we could spend a lot more time because there's some great questions.
There are some great questions, and my apologies for not having the time to get through them all, but we'll do what we can at the end of the session to turn some of these questions around for you. So please feel free to reach out to Graham, Jen, or Brett on their LinkedIn profiles. I'm sure they will really look forward to your connections there. We have a number of webinars we're rolling out over the next 2 to 3 months, and I highly recommend you have a look at that on our website, which is boardprohub.com/webinars. The next one in our series is Understanding Board Dynamics on May 19th. So you'll receive an email from us really shortly, which will include a video of today's webinar, the presentation slides, our topic white paper, and also the templates. We'll also post this collateral to our webinar page over the next couple of days. So as you leave the webinar, don't forget to complete our 1-minute survey, go into the draw to win our hamper worth $400, and we'll announce the winner of that shortly after the session today. So thanks everybody, Graham, Jen, Brett, Vari, thank you very much for your help, and everybody, we hope to see you back in our other live webinars over the coming months. Thank you very much.